Thank you. Okay, let's bring back in our panelists. Joachim, Jaap, and Sophie, can you come back online for us, please? You can put the video on if you want to as well. There we go.
Brian, I'm not sure if there's another slide for the panel talk. Shall we just go to the next person
Yes.
slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, wait.
Well, let's see. Thomas,
that was too far.
Coffee break.
Yeah, but this one is only black, so I'm not sure what this is.
We'll bring up one of the designs from Blanca as well. Thomas, you still there?
Yes, I'm still there. I'm trying to open up or to open up my webcam.
Okay, you don't have to, but if you want
to.
Morning, Sophie. All right. Okay, so let's kick off with some of the questions that we had earlier. So one from Stefan, and I promised I would bring that back in. So, Chris, what is your opinion regarding water reuse in respect of energy consumption and saving? It's fairly broad. Who wants to take that? Joachim?
Yeah,
let me
could
take a look at it. Yes.
Repeat the question? I didn't
yes. So what do you think of water reuse in respect of energy consumption and saving? How valuable is water reuse?
Yeah, of course, water reuse is the first thing you have to do. I've had seawater desalination is the most energy-intensive process, so if you have to supplement water sources by desalination, then it's the worst option, and so water reuse is for sure the very first thing you have to follow.
Okay, Christoph Blocher, he's asking, his comment rather than question, the forecast on the increase of renewable energy is encouraging. This was in relation to Joachim's presentation, I think, on the increase of renewable energy is increasing. However, if every sector, water, reuse, mobility, chemical production, heating, uses such numbers to justify an increase of energy consumption, we end up quite different than forecasted. How do we get accurate figures, I think is really what Christoph is pushing to here. Do we have broadly agreed standards for how we calculate, and is the whole framework of energy consumption in the water process properly understood at this point? Thomas?
Well, I'm just a little bit disturbed by a horn blowing outside. Well, I hope you don't hear it. Well, if I get the question right, so I see with relation to energy, I see the point that we have different energy uses between different processes in industry. For the water, those steel industry is looking for how they could make use of energy, so other industrial processes as well. So I see here quite a challenge and only limited opportunities to get closer connected. I hope I didn't miss the core of the question.
No, I think that's about right. Sophie, any comments on that? Can't hear you. Can you switch your mic on there? Can we hear Sophie?
Maybe she's muted locally because her line is actually open, I guess.
Yeah. Sophie, can you try again?
Or just try to rerun the audio for a second. If for some reason it was maybe blocked.
Still muted somehow.
End it completely. I mean, just click one of this because it worked before.
Okay, let's with Sophie, we can back on again. And okay, and then we had other questions as well regarding digitalization too. Karen asks, can you comment on benefits with digitalization in remote areas? Who wants to take that?
Well, so this is Thomas, so I could take that. Well, yes, of course, we have that in terms of, let's say, remote control. That means we have also already today operator models, so that means where the, let's say, process and plant operator is not being on-site, so that is where digitalization can be quite helpful, also in terms of predictive maintenance and so on. So there, I think digitalization can be quite helpful also for remote areas.
Okay, and just to stay on that as well, maybe other panelists want to comment too. Joachim, can you elaborate a bit on the current status of digitalization in the industrial water management side? What are the main hurdles? That's really the essence of what are the main hurdles in terms of digitalization in industrial water management?
Well, so for the first part, I think industrial water management is starting to follow the routes that are already under the way with Industrial 4.0, as it is more or less the same concepts. Well, the main hurdles that we see is also for the industrial water management, it's security aspects. In terms of, as I said, for example, for remote control of contractor models for operation of treatment plants and maintenance. So this is really a big hurdle that we see here. And also is for the decision making is that we are at the moment, it's quite difficult to quantify what is the benefit of digitalization in industrial water management. So for the boards to make decisions.
Do you think that's surprising that it's difficult to quantify the digitalization payback?
Yes, because it's at the moment we are still at the beginning of implementing it, so that means there are only little, let's say, reliable numbers and figures in there. So everything that we are saying right now is what we expect and what we predict will happen or could happen. But it's not like we have a long track record where we can say, well, we've done this and that and that and that, and that has shown that we have gained that and that benefits.
Okay.
And besides that, it's also the human factor. So that means acceptance in the at the employees, people getting trained. Like with the Corona, it's the same. Like with this webinar and stuff like this. So many people have been reluctant on this, and it's the same also for implementing digital things like with the predictive maintenance things and all that stuff on site. So it's comparable.
So the learning curve required here as well.
Yes.
Does this have to happen? Some companies will be clearly more proactive at this than others, and some municipalities too. Do we need to see a European approach to this to educate in a broader way?
Well, if I may answer, yes, because we have many companies working across Europe, also production companies like in chemical industries and in other process industries. There it's quite helpful if we have a European approach and bringing forward that also in the educational part and also in the technology development.
Okay, do we have Sophie back on audio?
Yes, I hope so. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very clearly.
Okay, excellent. No, I'm far from an expert in this area, but I just wanted to make a remark because sure. Thomas Track's presentation was extremely interesting, and that's why I asked the question about old industrial sites, because I mean I think we're all faced with that in the base industry, be it paper or steel, chemical, etc. And I think, without knowing exactly, because I'm not located on site, I'm a federation, but I think there are many things that are being done of what Thomas is speaking about in terms of digitalization, in terms of trying to map the water conducts and so on. But what I hear a lot from the companies is that given the design of these sites, and when I say old, it's not that they are not working or they are perfectly high tech, but they have a certain design and they are not greenfield sites. So that means that many times you simply don't know. You don't have the perfect mapping of where each of the water conducts go. For example, I'm just taking one example. One of our companies in the middle of Sweden have about, when you come to stormwater, okay, so you do today, according to the legislation, you do have to make act on the stormwater in order to prevent contamination from getting out of the site, of course. Now they have 800 stormwater wells on the site. And given the design of this site that is about 100 years old, it's very difficult to get an accurate picture of where those wells are, how they work, and so on. So what they do is that they act as much as they can to prevent. you know, everything from the nature-based solution that I mentioned yesterday to, you know, very simple, wherever you can, they're looking really at the upstream's actions. And this is just an example to say, and I'm sure that in terms of water use, what this is about, it's the reasoning is the same. It's the fact of really the extension and the sizes of the sites, and in Sweden we're nothing compared to continental Europe. You have much larger sites. So how do you, yeah, how do you get enough information? I think that's for us a challenge.
As an outsider from your industry as well, as a journalist working across a broad range of subjects, that's what strikes me, is there's a lack of joined up information available. There's still a very strong, I get the impression there's a strong silo approach here as well. And yet that data is probably in the mix and available for better decision making if it's brought together in a more dashboard and benchmarked approach as well. Let's move on just a little bit to financing, as we're close to our time. Jaap, on the financing side as well, we had a question earlier about Brazil. Now, the financing in terms of European Investment Bank, European Bank of Reconstruction, Development, you've got other big projects, the Council of Europe, Development Bank as well, and then we have the repackaged of the Juncker Investment Fund now for the Green Deal. You have a lot of ways through here, not just for developing in Europe, but for European companies to export technology, expertise, and to have a global impact as well. Do you see blue bonds within the context of European ambition or Europe's export capacity as well?
Do you want an honest answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, we see it as an opportunity. All examples you said is more or less from government side created, and it will be a real market concept, because basically there is a lot of green money available and it can't find their destination. And I spoke to Thomas 1.5 years ago, and he told me about the water projects who couldn't find financing. Actually, we make a quick connection in that. We checked it at some financial institutes and they were very enthusiastic. They say, for example, the PGGM, it's the largest pension fund of the Netherlands. They said, well, this is the best idea of business concept I ever heard in the water sector so far. So they're really waiting for the projects. And we don't need help from government, bank, World Bank or whatever. If we have a project and the financial institutes and the money is available, we can get into action. And there was also another question about Brazil or other places around the world. Basically, we want to focus first on Europe because it's nearby and practical, but it's just the first step. When it's work here, we can do it everywhere. Basically, the financial institute, they don't like risk, basically. So Europe has a lower risk.
Well, the European Bank of Investment, they're there to take more of the risk capacity that the commercial market won't absorb as well.
Yes, but I had an invitation from one of such institutes. It's a Dutch concept for investing in Africa, to look at if we can combine the low risk via that concept in combination with the blue bonds. But first we want to run the first one, just look if it is possible with the market itself, and later on we can expand it to other places, other concepts or add-ons, etc. But basically there's a market for this, so we can start.
So a couple of questions on the chat there. If you take a look at those for me, I'll come back to you in just a second. Also, it strikes me, this is something we haven't really mentioned, the CIA have a report on the likelihood of war as a consequence of water shortage. It's a declassified report. If you're bored over the lockdown, you can read it. And the idea also of water resource and the next pandemic in the context of antimicrobial resistance as well. And we heard, about the treatment. I think it was 80%. There was one figure struck me. 80% of wastewater is discharged untreated. Was I think Joachim presented that earlier. So 80% of wastewater discharged untreated. That feeds directly into the antimicrobial resistance argument as well. So in terms of how the industrial water management produces cost savings, there seems to be a much wider security and public health argument, and as a consequence, the availability of more finance to deal with that. And just to add another layer in to join this up and throw it back to you, the Green Deal as well. It seems to me that it's not well understood the linkage between green targets, water efficiency, and the cost of energy to achieve that water efficiency as well. Any comments from the panel on those points? Be brave.
It's a long question.
Yeah. So basically, do you think water is not well understood in the public policy arena in terms of the contribution it can make to solving other problems in society? Let's put it that way.
Yes. Or maybe I can combine it back to the financial sector. Last year we have gained a few large financial institutes, because normally it's about social responsibility and water. They were active, but you see now in these days the risk department is very interested in water, because the shortage of water create a big financial risk, and we see that they're very active in solving that problem of get insight. But basically, they just don't know anything about water, and even politicians of governments, they don't have a clue about the subject. They see, well, water is water, but there's completely different.
Michel makes the point, although it's a message we're not allowed to make. Isn't our biggest problem the fact that fresh water is simply too cheap? Can we learn from areas in the world where water is more expensive than oil? In fact, I think everything's more expensive than oil this week, actually.
Sorry.
So do we need to learn from areas where water is a scarce resource and begin to apply that learning approach now before we're compelled to do it?
Well, this is, yeah, sorry.
Thomas or Sophie, go ahead.
Well, Sophie, go ahead. I already talked so much.
No, my answer would be yes, definitely so. And I think, I mean, you have countries, I know specifically Chile, where I lived myself and worked, and they have had dry summers and problems. What we saw in 2018 in Europe, they have had that since 2010. And I see their industries, for example, mining industry, which is very important over there. I mean, they've worked and they've done research on this for many years, of course. While we have been in Europe, in my view, we have been very focused on water quality. And that's also on a within a regulatory framework. Unfortunately, we don't have the Commission here now, but I'm pretty confident to say that we have focused too much on water quality, and maybe on a more detailed view and not so much looking at the whole perspective, and we lost the water quantity. I'm not saying we haven't done anything, but I think that we have a lot to learn from countries like Chile, where they have been working concretely with this within industry for years.
We're going to wrap up now, so just to put to our panel a simple question, you give a quick response to each of you on this. What is the benefit to industry in calculating the true value of water? Thomas.
Well, from my side, gaining, well, financial benefits, ecological benefits, and also public perception benefits.
Interesting, thank you. Jaap?
Well, they give water a value when there's a lack of water. So, yeah, but that's the story. If is there a lack of fresh water for operations, then it has a value.
Okay, thank you. Joachim?
Yeah, so I think if the companies calculate the real value of water, then their innovation capacities will increase, because they will be much more open-minded to new technologies.
That's a nice soundbite. If we can put that on social media today as well. Thank you. And last word, as always, Sophie.
Well, I would say that since we don't even have a common understanding of what is a water price within Europe, and we can get into detail that another time, but we don't have water pricing in Sweden, for example, the same way as you have in Europe.
Yeah.
So I think that the valuation or value of water should go through the ecosystem perspective, which means that you can value it, but not in monetary figures.
And yet money talks. Panelists.
Money talks, yes. Sorry.
Nice, Sophie.
Thank you all so much for your contribution here also. It's been a really nice discussion. To our attentive audience online, thank you so much for your contribution. Clearly you were listening to what was going on and for all your comments. That's much appreciated. And some of that will be used in follow-up today as well. Coffee break.